Welcome to another episode of A Little Privacy, Please. Today's guest is Michael Taylor, a senior director at KBRA in New York and a longtime public finance practitioner. He has nearly 25 years of experience in Muniland, having worked as a fundamental credit analyst, portfolio manager, and fixed income trader in a variety of public finance, infrastructure, and corporate consulting roles. You'll also see a familiar face on here today, too. We're lucky to be joined once again by Rudy Salo, a public finance partner in Nixon Peabody's Los Angeles office, and a guest from season 1 of A Little Privacy, Please. So Mike and Rudy, thank you for joining us today. We know that the impact of cyber attacks on city and municipal governments can be significant. Hackers can steal sensitive data, such as employee and resident information, financial data, intellectual property. Can you talk a little about cybersecurity and why KBRA includes this information in its credit reports so that investors have a good understanding of the cyber protections in place when making decisions?
To start, at KBRA, we believe that a key differentiator is the fact that we don't offer an ESG scoring product. Instead, we focus on ESG factors that affect or have the potential to affect the risk of borrower default, and we integrate those directly into our credit rating reports. So in the context of credit, we believe that most ESG issues are inherently management issues. So we call our approach to ESG in corporates, financial institutions, and governments, or CFG ratings, ESG management. Now, across the landscape of CFG, we have identified 3 factors that we believe have a higher likelihood of being credit relevant. These are climate change with a particular focus on carbon emissions, stakeholder preferences, and importantly for this conversation, cybersecurity, which falls under governance. I think it's important to understand, however, that the risk each sector and each issuer face are both unique and distinct. So these 3 categories are not necessarily exhaustive.
So, Michael, what specific categories or types of cybersecurity specific information is KBRA going to be looking for during its diligence process and its credit rating process?
So the questions regarding cyber risk that KBRA generally pursues can vary considerably based on issuer and overall the sector in which they reside. But we worked with our own cybersecurity team to develop areas of inquiry such as, does the issuer employ a dedicated person, staff, or vendor to manage information or IT security? Does the issuer follow an internationally accepted security standard, which is important? And finally, does the issuer have a business continuity or disaster recovery plan in place? And are they regularly tested? Now, specific to U.S. public finance, well, questions could be focused on sector-specific areas for things like airports, utilities, colleges, universities, healthcare, and other credits. The fundamentals are very similar.
So let me just ask a follow-up to that then, Michael. And I guess I'm coming at this from a non-bond lawyer's perspective, but if I get into a car accident, there's a pretty good chance my insurance rates are going to go up next year, my auto policy. I mean, is it that much of a correlation in the world of bonds ratings as well? If an issuer has been hit by a cyber attack, does that necessarily mean that the costs of borrowing are going to go up?
Not necessarily, Jason. And I think specifically, more recently, we're finding that where the issuer is domiciled is increasingly important. As we've seen U.S. states like North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, Pennsylvania, New York, and Texas having introduced legislation banning payments by governmental entities. So in connection with ransomware attacks, this potentially reduces or eliminates any financial incentives to attack altogether.
Michael, a follow-up question. If an issuer that you're doing a rating on absolutely has 0 cybersecurity protocols or doesn't meet those 3 tests, could that affect the rating?
It is possible that a lack of safeguards altogether could lead in a lower rating category. But at this state, that's very few and far between from an issuer perspective.
So, Michael, what can, or maybe the better question is, what should issuers be doing if there's been a cyber attack in order to improve their opportunity to sort of get back on track and reduce the cost of borrowing?
Thanks, Jason. I think it's important to know that organizations, regardless of size and industry, are all at risk of cyber attacks, and the losses incurred are not simply monetary. So sensitive data, reputation, these things can all be compromised. So the things that KBRA looks at are the potential financial losses as well as the possible denial of service to tax or ratepayers. and where relevant, the strength and the ability of an issuer's programs and systems to protect private data and prevent future breaches, malware, and ransomware attacks. For issuers that have already experienced breaches, I think it's also important to note whether or not the ramifications were serious, what the ramifications of the breach were, how the issuer has changed procedures and hardened systems to prevent future attacks.
How much has this changed over the last 5 years or so?
I think, as we've seen increased instances of cyber breaches, theft of data, as well as demands for ransom, it has been increasingly in the headlines, and it's something that, again, we've incorporated into our fundamental credit analysis.
Michael, it appears that either you personally or KBRA has hit by a cyber attack because all you have is a blue wall behind you while I have a bunch of tchotchkes. What has happened, and what are you okay?
And how can we help?
Yeah,
All is well.
Are you in prison? Can we get you out of there? Do you just wave if you need any help at all? We will come to you.
So today, given in honor of Rudy, who's our second time guest on A Little Privacy, Please. So that's an honor. We should have, confetti or something. But who would you rather drive across country with, Rudy or anyone else?
Rudy's a pretty good guy. I'll take Rudy. I think he can fill a conversation for a good 3-4 days.
So that's going to do it for us on this episode of A Little Privacy, Please. Thanks so much to Michael Taylor and to Rudy Salo, for joining us for a second time. We'll see you next time on A Little Privacy, Please.